Welcome to the Tribal Data Toolbox Exercise 13, which covers reports and charts for continuous methods. This is our great IT guy, Gary, showing you a chart, and this is me hoping that you can pay attention during this video, and I will show you how to get the answers to the questions in Exercise 13. So, Exercise 13 says, of course, open your SOP, and then it has these questions, and I've just highlighted in yellow the hint associated with each question. So it says, you can answer the questions by looking at the continuous methods, reports, and charts. Click Continuous Methods, Reports, and Charts. Okay, great. And then, I've got the help file. You can click here for the help file, and that pulls up a familiar looking SOP. And it's important that you follow along with the SOP, because if you mess up, chances are it's described in the SOP. So the first question is, what must the absolute value of the 0QC check output be in order for the toolbox to consider the check passing? And then it asks a specific question, what was the display or output value of the 0QC check performed for Site 1, Sampler 1 on 8/22? And then it says, hint, generate the report for QC checks. So we need to generate a report for Site 1, Instrument 1 on 8/22 for the 0QC check. Okay, so we'll click Site 1, Sampler 1, and that's Ozone, and we only have data for one sampling year, and the date that we want is 8/22. So we will select 8/22 through 8/22, that's the last date. Now, this pink button here asks you if you want to add temporary zero value records for data gaps. And please be sure to read the SOP about this, but you should probably click this always. And the first thing it does is evaluate whether there are any gaps. In this case, there are no gaps. In other cases, you may have data with large gaps. For example, you may be looking at data collected over a month, and then your analyzer was down for a month, and then you've got more data. So clicking this would produce a query box saying, would you like us to add temporary zero values so that your chart makes sense? And go ahead and click yes, and be sure to not get frustrated if it doesn't happen right away, because that particular query can take some time, but it produces charts that actually make sense. And if you look at the SOP, you can see an example of that. So we're looking at 8/22, and we want to find out what the zero span check was. So we're first just going to click on quality control checks, and that will produce this. Now, one thing that happens is the print preview window takes over the whole screen. So, and if you click on this, it will zoom. It will toggle back and forth, zooming in and zooming out. So we're going to look at the zero check value. It had a device display of 2 parts per billion. So it passed because the toolbox considers the zero check passing if it's less than 0.01 parts per million or 10 parts per billion. So that's the answer to that question. And what you do is you just type it in, or if you want, you could handwrite it on a printed copy and then fax it to us. And I wanted to show you something else that the toolbox does. But first, let's figure out how do we get out of here when we don't see the lower X. So in print preview, we don't see the lower X. You have to click on, and remember, if you click the upper red X, that's fine. Just get back into the toolbox. And as long as you have moved to a new record in whatever you're doing, the toolbox saves automatically. But to get out of this print preview mode, click here, print preview, and then that shows the ribbon again. In print preview, Access automatically closes the ribbon. So now you see this button, close print preview, and that will close that screen. So that's the answer for quality control checks for the first question. I wanted to show you a chart for zero span checks, because in addition to having your zero be close to zero as a QC check, you also have to make sure that your analyzer doesn't have wildly changing responses to a zero concentration. So if you click on this, you'll see a chart with all the zero span checks that you've put into the toolbox. So we want to make sure to include that one that we did on the 6th, right? Was there a QC check done on the 6th? I'm just going to put in 8.1 through 8.22, and then it'll capture all of them. I'm going to say this, even though I know there aren't. And now I'm going to click on this chart zero span check, and it shows me the two values for zero. When I put zero concentration of, or zero air, into the ozone analyzer, what was its response? And if you remember, our first one failed because the zero check was way too high. And the second one did pass because it was very low, close to zero. As you can see, zero is this line here. And what is important is, in terms of zero drift, to know that that's what this means, the change between your QC checks in terms of your zero check result. So I'm going to get out of Print Preview by clicking Print Preview tab and then close Print Preview. And now I'll go on to the next question. So the next question is, from 8.8 through 8.22, what was the highest and lowest valid hourly ozone concentration at Site 1? And what was the percent data completeness? Okay, so we probably want a report that has something calculated like data completeness. So let's look at the toolbox, and we want 8.8, where are you? 8.8 through 8.22. We are interested in hourly pollutant concentration reports and charts. So let's click Hourly Concentration Report. Again, this is hard to see, so you click here and then it zooms in. But this has the hourly values. We're looking for the highest and the lowest. Well, we could search through, or we could go to the very last page. And remember, there's these navigation buttons. So we're going to click this last page button, and that tells us that the lowest, and we're looking at ozone concentrations in parts per billion, was about 8 parts per billion, and the maximum was about 85 parts per billion, and the percent data completeness was 89.7%, or really about 90%. So we will type those in to our answers, and now go back in. Now remember, when we get out of something in Print Preview, the lower X doesn't show, so I'm going to click Print Preview and then find the lower X and then go on to the next question. So the next question is, describe the trend of the ozone concentration on 8.19. So, and then it gives a hint. Look at the chart for just one day. So we're going to look at ozone concentrations on 8.19. We're going to go into the toolbox and we're going to make sure we've got the date range selected, just 8.19 through 8.19. And now we want to look at a chart of the hourly ozone concentration on that day. And we see a beautiful chart here. And the exercise just asks us to describe the trends. So it was low until the sun started rising around 5 o'clock in the morning, and then it peaked at the maximum solar radiation time, probably, which is right around midday. So we just described that in the exercise question in this exercise. So the next question is, how much precipitation, total inches, were received on the 12th of August? Be sure to follow the directions on page 5 of the Reports and Charts SOP. Okay, we look at that, and it describes different sorts of checks, and we follow along, and we see, okay, we're looking for the 12th, so I put 812 through 812 in the drop-down box, and now I just need a report on the metadata to generate summary statistics, because I remember from reading the SOP that on the last page of any of these reports are summary statistics covering the whole period that you're talking about. So in this case, we're just looking for one day. So we're going to click Report Metadata, and it pulls up this, and you can see there's columns for the different metadata that we have for this site and day. And remember to click the navigation buttons, and you notice that the page is 2 pages long, the report is 2 pages long, and the precipitation, the average was 1.44, and since we generated this, and I'll go back to the beginning, so this is the last record, 8/12, and the first record, 8/12, so that means that the total was 1.44 inches on this day. So we just type that in, and now we're ready for the next question, which is from 8/8 through 8/22, what was the maximum hourly wind speed? So again, we select the dates 8/8 through 8/22 in the date range boxes. And now we want to generate some summary statistics. So we're going to click on report. We could click the charts and look at it, but if we want the exact calculations, we click a report for metadata. And again, this has many pages, and you can see in the footer way down here, and you can see if you magnify it, that there are 19 pages because we're looking at hourly data over several weeks. So we want to go to the last page, so we click the fast forward button, and then you see that the summary statistics for the parameters we have are here, including wind speed with average, minimum, and maximum. So the answer to the question is 33.3, but really 33 meters per second is the answer to this question. So we type that in, and now we're ready for the next question. So the next question is asking us to look at one day on the 9th, and did the highest wind speed occur at the same time as the highest ozone concentration? Okay, let's go in and look at wind speed and ozone for the 9th. So let's just make sure we select one day, and we know we don't have any zero values in this whole data set, and we are going to look at one of these buttons that compares your pollutant concentration against your metadata. So we're looking at concentration versus wind speed, so we'll click this. And we see a nice chart covering one day from midnight to midnight. And the answer to the question is no, because the highest ozone concentration occurred somewhere around midday, maybe right around noon here. And the wind speed in pink, definitely it ramped up all day, peaking around 9 o'clock at night. So we just type that into the question here. And then we go back into the toolbox and say, all right, we're ready for the next question. I'm going to click that print preview button, close print preview, and that takes me back to the toolbox ready for the next question. And that is, what was the daily average wind speed on the 8th of August? So to answer that question, we go back in the toolbox and we select the dates 8/8 through 8/8. And let's look at a report for metadata and go to the last page. And we can see the average wind speed was about 7.1 meters per second, and we've got minimums and maximums also. So that's the answer to that question. So again, we get out of print preview by clicking print preview button and then close to get back to the toolbox. So our next question is to find the 7-day average between 8/12 and 8/18. So I've typed those into the box, and then you can see down here we've got options for different number of days in an averaging period. So if you want to take averages over 5-day periods, 10-day periods, 30-day periods, you type in the answer or the number of days here. So we're going to type in 7 beginning on the 12th, and then we're going to generate a report for average concentrations for that time period. Can't see it well? Click the screen to zoom, and you can also click these zoom in buttons down here to see it larger, and you can see it gives you just one row of the summary statistics for this time period from the 12th through the 18th, the average, minimum, maximum, and even the variability as reflected in the sample standard deviation. And the number of counts shows the number of records that went into that. So that's 166 hours totally in this time period. And we type that in, and that's the answer to the question number 8. And that's the last question in this exercise. So I'm going to go back in here, click the Print Preview tab, close file, and that is the end of exercise 13.